sure did sound awfully decadent when you wrote it out in Messenger. It was like beer porn.
Okay, well,
you know.
I try. Well, what I'm drinking is Orange is the New Vlad. It's a combination of a Russian Imperial Stout aged in whiskey barrels out of Lark in Tasmania, and a Orange Blossom traditional stack mead aged in rum barrels, again from Lark Distillery in Tasmania.
Okay.
And then it's blended about 70-30 mead to slightly. It's like a really dark brown beer. So it's not full black like a stout because you've got so much meat, but a really nice and very silky and smooth. And the aromas, when you first smell it, the combination of the two different barrels, the rum and the whiskey barrels, just really get you going at the first, and then you start to bring in the orange blossom mead and a little bit of the roasty notes. So, a really, really intense aroma.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it'd almost be a flavor overload, you know? I mean, it's like so intense.
It's a bit polarizing. My dad refuses to drink it because he just doesn't like it. And it's probably 60-40 for those who like it and those who say it's a bit over the top. But it's part of the fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I got it. All right, so there will be some of this when I'm in Australia, right?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, there will be.
Yes. Awesome. Because I want to try this. I don't know. It'll probably be like too intense for me to drink more than a little bit of it, but I just want to taste it, you know? I mean, it just sounds really amazing.
It's 14%, so it will pick you up and put you to bed if you're not careful.
Wow. We're having Skype issues here. I don't know what's...
I thought you were still processing his pick you up and put you to bed. Concept.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm trying to juggle that and all the... Wait, no... You know, so... yeah, you were really attenuated there for a bit, Steve, but you seem pretty clear now, so Skype was having a little bit of difficulty. Maybe the wires were stretched too taut between here and Australia. I don't know. But or you know, those damn magpies are probably attacking them. Sorry. I had to. Okay, so Steve, just hang out with us, and we'll get this fixed. And in the meantime, we got some questions that carried over from the show last week because we get a lot of people who listen after the fact. So we'll get questions in later on. So. Is Ryan still here? I don't know, Ryan, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. He said, yeah. So this is stuff from some of the shows that Ryan's done in the past, and these are from Danny Acevedo. So, okay. First thing he asked Ryan is, can you clarify when you say trash can as to exactly what you're using? Is it food grade or not? I think he's wondering, are you like lining it or something like that?
No, it's actually. So when I say a trash can, I've seen other pictures of other people using this same can on different Facebook sites, I believe, and I'm not exactly certain, but I think that the brew shops get their hops shipped in them. They're actually 12-gallon cans, and they have a loose-fitting top. The top rim is lipped over and curled over so you can put your fingers underneath there. And they look pretty much just like a regular trash can. They're food grade and they're white. And so I generally use 2 or 3 at a time. And in my opinion, it's just as easy to make 30 gallons of mead as it is to make 3 gallons of mead. So I like to make concurrent batches at the same time. So that's what I mean by a trash can. I would suggest to never use plastic that's not food grade.
Yeah, which leads us to his next question, which is, can you espouse a little on the types of food grade and reusability like HDPE, LDPE, peat, polystyrene, etc.? That might be too long a question for now, and I don't know if you want to get into that, but he asked.
Well, so I can tell you a little bit. On all of the plastic, there's a triangle, and then inside the triangle, there's a number. And that number then would dictate what type of plastic this is made from. I would suggest to highly just use the number 2 inside the symbol, and that's the HDPE. That's the very best plastic that you can use for food grade. It's good for long-term storage. If you had to, you could use 1, 4, and 5 as well, but I think it's so easy to get good food grade stuff that I would just stick with the number 2, or that's also the HDPE, which means high density polyethylene.
Okay. So make it easy, stick with number 2.
That's correct.
Okay, cool. All right, so he's asking good questions here, but some of them may be a little more involved than we want, but we'll see if we need to do them now or later on. Can you discuss... Okay. Can you discuss non-fermented nutrients and energizer? Like Brewcraft nutrients and energizer, as it appears the amount required of each is different, or at least the level of vitamins and minerals per gram, per teaspoon, per tablespoon. All right, per gram / teaspoon / tablespoon. Sorry.
Sure. That's a great question, Danny. Unfortunately, those manufacturers won't give us any legitimate information in other words, they won't tell us anything that's quantified with a certain metric. So the problem there, we don't know how many parts per million there is of this and that. And so that's the primary reason that I use the Go Firm and the Fermade O, and also Fermade K is also listed to the exact amounts of parts per million of yan. With Brewcraft and all these other generic rebranded stuff, we don't know what that is. And so subsequently, I don't have a good answer as far as how much you need to use. I do see in your next question that you go on to talk about discussing staggered nutrient additions. And you say that when discussing SNAs, if reaching a sugar break is taking an extended amount of time and off smells develop due to stressed yeast, can you dose ahead of the sugar break to help push them and keep them happy? I'm going to read the next question too, and then I'll answer both of these two questions as one, more or less. He goes on to say that it appears that if I use the calculator and establish my SNA, the actual amount of nutrients needs to be higher. For example, the calculator says my SNA should be 1.5 teaspoons every 24 hours, so I mix up the nutrients and I get them ready for the next few days. However, I get stressed yeast smells well before the next dose. So I have to add more nutrients overall, keeping in mind that the temp is stable and it's not controlled, but it's stable, and regular off-gassing is conducted. And let me just read the next one too, and then we'll answer them all together as one. It says, these are all new questions. Oh, wait, hang on just a minute. I'm missing something. Oh, it's another question I have. So, Danny, this makes a perfect point to consider for all of our listeners when we're not using the products that we all try to tout. In other words, if you don't use Fermade O, Fermade K, and Go Firm, we really don't know how many parts per million of anything is in these particular products. But I can tell you by reading your question and saying I'm using what the calculator tells me to feed my must, and I'm still getting stinky smells long before it's time to feed them again, I would say that that's a very specific indication that the Brewcraft materials that you're using don't have the amount of yan in it that the Go Firm does, or the Fermade O, and the Fermade K. So the only thing I can tell you is if you're going to continue to use those particular products, you're going to need to play with them for a little while to figure out how much more you're going to need to use over and against the TOSNA protocol. You see, TOSNA is built specifically around Fermate O, and then, of course, Sergio made a new one with the Fermate K and DAP. We know what those numbers are there, but we don't with the Brewcraft. So, unfortunately, if you want to continue to use that, you're just going to have to continue to add more and more as you experiment with these products until you eventually come to the place where you know, just from experience, how much you need to add to make them work.
Great.
So my suggestion would be once you're done with these, maybe it'd be a good idea to go buy the Fermate OK and Go Firm and use that stuff instead.
Or
now, I also have one other question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, or try them side by side and see what happens, you know?
That's right. And you're just going to have to experiment with that particular food source until you get it from experience. I did receive another question over on Got Mead. Actually, Vicki, you sent this to me from, this is from Christian Doing. Hi, Christian. Christian comment says, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the awesome modern mead making series, blah, blah, blah. My question is, following the TOSNA protocol, the first Fermate O at 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and with the intent at the 1/3 sugar break. My original bricks was 24. I oxygenated with pure O2 at pitch, 12 hours and at 24 hours. That's awesome that you're doing that, by the way, Christian. I'm sure you've already found that it makes a huge difference. He goes on to say, I degassed vigorously twice a day. I set at 62 degrees Fahrenheit. He said, unfortunately, I didn't check my hydrometer reading again until day 4, and it was down to 15 bricks. It was past the 1/3 sugar break, but before the 1/2 break. I decided to go ahead and give the 4th and final feed. I know that yeast cannot metabolize DAP past the 1/3 break, but how far are you willing to give the last feeding of Fermate O? All right, let's back up there just a little bit. In the Scott's Laboratory Handbook, they tell us that we're supposed to have all our food in by the 1/3 sugar break. Down here in your question, Christian, you mentioned that you say, I know that yeast cannot metabolize DAP past the 1/3 break. Let's clarify that a little bit because that's not exactly accurate. Yeast cannot metabolize DAP once it gets past the 9% alcohol by volume. Okay, so that's important. That may be at your 3rd break, but if you're only making a 9% mead, when it's completely finished, you can now see that 1/3 sugar break doesn't relate to when the yeast can no longer metabolize the DAP. So that's important to understand. It's not the 1/3 break, but it's at the 9% ABV that yeast can no longer assimilate DAP. And I've recently been reading a little bit of buzz that they might think that the yeast actually can't assimilate anything, any of our different yan additions past the 9% ABV, but I don't know that they're really hanging their hat on that concept yet. So, how far are you willing to go past the last feed with your Fermate O? This is what I have done personally. I have bought from More Wine or More Beer. They're one and the same, more or less. They're owned by the same company. I bought yeast holes or ghost holes, yeast holes, I think they're called. They're just dead yeast that they grind up and then package. I have rarely found that by the time I go to my 4th feeding, that's always generally past the 1/3 break. Almost all the time nowadays, I just bother to skip that last feeding, and very, very rarely do I ever have my fermentation slow down to where it's not going to finish up. In fact, that almost never happens. I would tell you that if you